welcome back to another episode of Spittin Hoops. We're back on the online format. There's a lot of off-season topics to discuss and jump right into. But Anthony, here I am with my co-host. Let me know how have you been? How you been doing? Obviously, our last podcast was in person, but here we are back on the online vibes.
Woo-wee. Max, happy Friday. How we doing?
Yes,
Feeling
sir.
good. We are on the off season. NBA never stops.
Never stop. So since our last podcast, there was a Bradley Beal trade, there was an NBA draft, there was other free agency moves, and we're going to give you guys a timeline of that since our last podcast. But most importantly, just the first thing I think we kind of have to hop into is the NBA draft that happened June 22nd, so last Thursday. Kind of a straightforward draft. I mean, it went according to a lot of reports. But it was really the Wemby draft. I think that's the way I'll remember the draft, and I think most people remember the draft. But Brandon Miller goes number 2, and Scoot goes number 3. Anthony, any big reactions to that?
Yeah, I mean, the Wemby pick was pretty obvious. I saw plenty of funny screenshots of people betting like $200,000 to win like $25 for him to go number 1. So congrats to all those people. I think Brandon Miller was a bit of a late switch at the end. I think Vegas had Scoot going second for a while, but personally, I mean, with the whole Brandon Miller, Paul George is my GOAT kind of thing, it had me thinking about like maybe to him, his GOAT in terms of how he likes to play is Paul George. So I won't even get into like anything else about it, but I like it a lot. He's a great shooter and on the court, and I think he's going to be super. I think
the John Morant mold.
yeah, just great mold, but a big, long guy that can really space the floor, and I think is going to be great, helpful culture setter to Charlotte for sure with LaMelo.
Big, long guy. What do you mean by that?
Yo, come on. Come on. It is 8:09 on a Friday.
My bad. Woke up with some demon energy. So Anthony's talking about the Vegas flip between Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson. So I don't know if you guys saw this. This is really fascinating. On FanDuel, up until 48 hours before the draft, Brandon Miller was favored by like 400. And then Shams sends out a tweet and the odds flip back to pro Scoot for like another like 36 hours like span. And then the last 12 hours, Brandon Miller finally like goes back ahead. And Woj sends out a tweet kind of like a FU to Shams and is like, this is the guy they wanted the whole time. If that's the guy they wanted the whole time, I feel like they didn't do their due diligence on Scoot. Brandon Miller, I think, is really good, and he is a good shooter, but from NBA range last year, he shot the same percentage as Scoot. So the reason we think Brandon Miller's 3-point percentage is also really good is because he's playing on a shorter 3-point line compared to Scoot's, right? So that is something that I thought was interesting. I do think Brandon Miller is going to be a really good player. Like, it's physical mold and also like, he's not my favorite player. I feel like I don't click with him personally, like when I see him on interviews and whatnot. But you can tell he's like locked in. Like that is one thing. Like I do respect that. I could see kind of why Michael Jordan type character was very like pulled to someone like Brandon Miller. And I do think at his peak, I mean, he's got a chance to be better than someone like LaMelo, to be honest. So
high praise.
And then the bigger deal though, out of that, in my opinion, was just Scoot going number 3. And Dame obviously has been sending out these like rumors, these feelers via his homie Chris Haynes. Oh my God, I muted his tweets. It's too much. We get a Dame update every 12 hours, but yeah, I think what's going to happen is that Dame and the Blazers are going to have this staring contest. And I think the season's going to start and he's going to realize Scoot is probably better than anyone who was on the team last year, like off the rip. I think Scoot might be better than Anthony Simons right now. And I think Anthony Simons is really good. But I think there's like a good chance Scoot comes in and immediately shows like all-star flashes, even if he's not consistently better than Anthony Simons, for example. And I think Dame might look around and go, oh, this might be my CJ for the next 5 years until I retire, So.
it's a perfect position for where the Blazers are, because they can just go ahead and start their rebuild right now if they so choose. And like you said, and like Scoot said, even on the draft night, I think their games could complement each other pretty well.
Yeah.
Another short point guard, so we'll see how that works. But he has that alpha mentality for sure, which is something that Dame has, and I think those alpha mentalities are the type that kind of tend to play off each other pretty well. So, I mean, I feel like the Blazers also have this room where if they start the season and it's not going exactly how they're hoping for, even if they're playing together well or whatever, they could make their trades later on in the year. So they got plenty of time. I think the Blazers are in a good spot.
Yeah, I low-key think like this kind of worked out perfectly. I think Brandon Miller would have needed to come in and be really, really good immediately. Scoot can kind of show flashes, and even with just flashes, like the Blazers have kind of taken the power away from Dame a little bit, where Dame doesn't have a no trade clause, right? Like they can trade Dame on a whim tomorrow if they want to. They probably won't, right? They want to maintain that relationship with probably the best player in their franchise history, to be honest. But I do think that like now the Blazers kind of have a lot of power here, and they can decide to make a trade, like trading away Dame, or let's say Scoot's really good, maybe they trade Scoot. I wouldn't, but there's routes now. I think the Brandon Miller thing would have pigeonholed them a lot more, and they ended up well here. Some big storylines of the night. Cam Whittemore, who has actually worked out for the Houston Rockets for their number 4 pick, he ends up dropping number 20. The Rockets end up picking Amen Thompson, sorry, and Cam Whittemore at 20. So that's pretty amazing draft in my opinion. I thought the Thompson twins kind of stole the show. A lot of people don't know about the Thompson twins, and I've watched a good amount of them with Overtime Elite, but even then you don't get a ton of their like personality shining through. And they're basketball junkies. There's so many interviews of them like before the draft, during the draft, after the draft, knowing way too much about basketball, right? And I'm rooting for them hardcore. And they had drip. They stuck together. They I don't know, big homies. Ausar flew to Houston for Amen Thompson's like press conference. I thought they stole the show for the last week or so in this draft. Those are the two guys I might be rooting the hardest for,
Oh, it's so cool seeing them go back to back. I did make a joke that when seeing Alsar watching Amen Thompson get to go to Houston, he has to go to Detroit, which geographically kind of stinks. But that being said, so cool to see. I think for the first time ever, 2 brothers going in the top 5, let alone twins, and back to back is just unbelievable. Yeah. I don't think people were really expecting Asar to be number 5. I thought other people were more in the mix for that from what I was seeing. But I do think that from the reports that I've heard, Asar has this ability. I think he has a higher floor at the moment, as in with his shooting has gotten way better, and he has that defensive presence that the Pistons could really, really use, and hopefully they're going to be able to lock in with that. But Amen Thompson, probably higher ceiling, great playmaker, and like you had said, perfect with Cam Whittemore as well. And you got Sengun, and you got Jalen Green. So now the core of this young Rockets team is really starting to form in, and they can start locking in. And it's really exciting to see what they're going to do.
I completely agree. I loved all those points. Asar, I actually have been really high on him. Like I think in our past podcast, I've just talked and like penciled him in as the 4th and 5th pick because I really thought that was going to happen and ended up happening. And there were rumors that there were going to be other players, like even Cam Whittemore got slotted in at the 5 slot, like in a lot of mock drafts I was seeing, which was pretty insane considering he ended up dropping, right? But I think Asar was the 5th best player in this draft, and the Pistons did great to pick him. I think Amen fits also the Rockets timeline where he might come in and be better than Jalen Green off the rip, which is like a little insane, but I think it's possible. I think his offensive game and his athleticism is like off the charts. Amen, this is right. But Asar fits perfectly in Detroit. Like they already have 2 ball handlers. Asar played the whole last year on Overtime Elite on the same team as Amen, actually playing more of like a 3-and-D small forward creator role, right? And I think it's like these guys just went to 2 perfect situations. These are also rival teams. There was the Cade and Jalen Green drama, and they always like the Pistons and the Rockets play really hard against each other. And I kind of like this, like kind of uniting this rivalry, which is kind of dope. Other points, Anthony Black went sixth. I thought that was an interesting pick. I didn't have too many issues with it. I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's a reach." I just saw a video of Anthony Black seeing the Jordan Poole trading, saying, "Oh, I'm not going there now." Don't. That's always a red flag. If the guy I picked is getting picky about who he's going to in the 5 through 10 range, like I'm a little nervous.
Yeah.
But the Wizards end up with Bilal Coulibaly, Victor Wembanyama's teammate, as a DC local slash French person. I'm hyped. I'm getting his jersey, like dead ass. I think I'm gonna order it today. He's great. Coulibaly is actually amazing. He's one of these guys that is just Wemby's friends, and so many scouts went to all of Wemby's games that they started noticing that Coulibaly was like really, really good, which is a
Yeah.
hilarious thing to get found. High defensive potential. He can finish. He'll be in the league a while too. This is not a Frank Ntilikina situation, but he can't shoot. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I think it's so cool when you're a guy like Wemby, the gravity of how good you are just allows other guys around you to prosper. So I do love that. There was one other guy. I mean, I do want to get into the Mavs trade as well and hear your thoughts because I thought that was a fantastic move on the Dallas Mavericks for several reasons. I want to give a quick shout out to a player that we might not talk as much about, but just touching on him is Jaime Jaquez. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right.
Jaime Jaquez.
But
yeah,
first off, I first kind of came to know this guy in the last year's March Madness, like 2022, and when UCLA made that run, and his ability to make tough shots when he doesn't necessarily look like a shooter, and just kind of have that culture. And now he's going to the Heat. I think that that's such a beautiful fit. So that was something that I just wanted to bring to the forefront because he wasn't in the lottery, but this guy's going to be a killer for sure and definitely mold right immediately with that team.
he reminds me of all these like super undersized centers or like big men that just kind of end up figuring it out, and maybe they add just enough of a 3-point shot to be like not offensive, like destructive pieces, to your own offense. I mean, last year he shot 50% from the floor, 32% from three in college. I hope that 3-point shot translates a little bit better, even if he can shoot like 31, 32% in the pros. I mean, he's a super like high impact, high intangibles. I hate using that word, but like in terms of like just the team gets better when he's on the floor, even though he's kind of a big man who gets like, he's not a big man who gets 20 rebounds a game. He gets like 8, right? Like, but he just finds a way to make it happen. I thought it was a great pick. It was a very Heat culture pick. The rumors they were picking between Podziemski and who the Warriors ended up taking right after, and Jaime Jaquez. I think whoever the Heat picked, the Warriors would have picked the opposite. And it's interesting because the Heat clearly, if it was Pods and Jaime Jaquez that they were both looking at, they were just going for pure IQ, like on the floor IQ type players out the draft. And I actually respect that a ton. Because they could have just gone the easy route, pick Cam Whittemore. And it's like, if Cam Whittemore flops, you're not getting fired or you're not getting pressed, right? Because he dropped so much, it kind of feels like you had to take him. But they kind of stuck to their guns for this guy that they really liked. And I respect that a lot.
Yeah, most definitely. Obviously, there is the other argument on the different side where we've seen time and time again where it's usually better to take the quote unquote better player. But at this point, when you're this far down in the draft and you're a team like the Heat or your team like the Warriors, and you're really trying to stay in this contention window at the moment, with a guy like Cam Whittemore, it might be difficult to implement him into the system that you already have going and that's so well established, where these guys who you're drafting instead can kind of fit in, learn their role, and then they can have a chance to flourish maybe in a few years once their older guys are out.
I was definitely surprised that one of these two between the Warriors and the Heat didn't take a flyer on Whittemore, specifically the Warriors. I really thought Jaime Jaquez is like a step above Podziemski, to be honest. As good as Podziemski was in college, like killer shooter, triple-double machine. But Whittemore just felt like a classic Warriors just swing for the fences, and then you can go out and trade Kuminga because Whittemore and Kuminga right now are like pretty similar guys. I think they're also similar ages, like within a year and a half of each other, which is crazy. But anyways, outside of that, I think we kind of covered the main points. The only big trades was the Koulibaly. So the Pacers just leverage potential trades elsewhere to get 2 second-rounders out of the Wizards to move up one slot. Thought that was smart out of the Pacers, but also smart out of the Wizards. Just why take a risk? 2 second-round picks, screw it. And then the Mavericks traded back from 10 to 12 with the Thunder, and they shipped off a $20 million contract in Davis Bertans. And then later they trade back into the first round by taking on Rashawn Holmes's contract and getting the 25th pick.
Yep.
And using those picks, they get Lively and Omax Prosper back to, like, respectively with those picks, right? I thought it was a great draft out of the Mavericks. And they killed it.
Such a great draft, and they really answered what they needed with this trade. Obviously, getting rid of Davis Bertans sucks to be a guy where you're moving down in the draft to get rid of a guy, but it is what it is, and they got to clear up some cap space. They needed rim protection, they needed defense, and that's where they're getting out of Lively. And then I think that Rashawn Holmes in the right environment can really thrive. He kind of got pushed to the end of the bench in Sacramento. I've always been a pretty big Rashawn Holmes guy. I don't know necessarily how great his defensive impact is, but they need size and they need kind of a dog who could benefit from being in a new environment. So, and the comparing contracts here, $20 million for Davis Bertans, and I think around 12.2 mil a year for Rashawn Holmes. So they're saving a lot of money there. So it'll be exciting to see what moves that they can make in this upcoming offseason.
No, I completely agree. I thought they knocked it out of the park. I feel like on this podcast also I've mentioned me liking Rashawn Holmes. I think he really got the short end of the stick on a team that was like just not built to his play style at all. Like like the Kings are a fast moving, like a lot of passing team, etc. Rashawn Holmes, if he gets to rim run and just set a bunch of screens all game, he's gonna be great, I think, on the Mavericks. Great is a relative term, but he'll be good. Yes. And then Derek Lively is just kind of a younger version of Rashawn Holmes, to be honest, like an athletic rim running guy. He's way more of a high flyer than Rashawn Holmes. I don't think Lively will be a big like contributor year one, but I think they probably wanted Lively at 10 anyways. They trade back, they get Lively, and then Omax Prosper. Yeah, and then Omax Prosper also great pick to get back into the first round. Like, he's a great prospect. I think he could actually contribute out the gate because this is a pretty good situation for him. So we'll see. I thought Sacramento trading him away was a little interesting because of a move they ended up making later. Like, they flipped it because Sacramento uses this cap space that they just make from this Rashawn Holmes trade pretty inefficiently, in my opinion. But we'll get to that later.
We will, yeah. Tough call on their part.
Yeah. Okay. So with that's the NBA draft. I think we covered the main storylines. Let's get into a little off-season timeline. So really quickly, we're just going to run through some major events. June 19th and kind of in the weeks before, we got Mike Dunleavy taking over as the general manager and president of basketball ops of the Warriors, and Draymond Green declines his $36 million player option, which was pretty surprising to me. I think you only decline $36 million if you're Draymond, if you know there's a contract offer in free agency coming. Then Kuzma, declines his player option. Bruce Brown declines his player option. $28 million player option. For Draymond, the $28 million player option. Bruce Brown, Kuzma, they declined their player options. And then finally on this is June 18th, actually. So this is before this. We get the Bradley Beal trade. The Bradley Beal trade that we've kind of been waiting for. And on the last podcast, I think we offhandedly mentioned it. Kind of some connects to the Heat, what this would mean if you went to the Suns. And actually on the last podcast, I thought it was a complete smokescreen. I thought the Suns did not have enough to trade for Beal. And I talked about that for a good 5 minutes. And then a Beal trade happened before we even posted the last podcast.
So we didn't post that part.
Yeah, so we didn't post that part. Yeah.
We did not post that part. Real quick on some of the first moves we talked about, my quick hits, and I want to hear yours, Max. Dunleavy Jr., I think has made some pretty aggressive and quick trades right off the bat. So interesting to see that quick culture change. I do want to hear your thoughts on what you think he's going to be as a GM. Draymond Green, not too surprised. He's going to decline that option. I really don't know if he's going to stay with the Dubs. He'll obviously flirt around with other teams, but that's what you do. Kyle Kuzma, not at all surprised he declined the 13 mil option because he's clearly shown that he's worth more than that. And then Bruce Brown, man, I think I mean, obviously he declines that almost 7 million player option. Great call for him. I think that he really showed off a lot in the NBA playoffs. I think he's ready for a bag. The one thing is, you always go into do you want to take that same money you were going to get and be able to run it back with the same team for the chance to go back to back with the Nuggets. And that's up to the players. And so I think there's a lot of teams pursuing him. I know the Mavs are talking to him. I know the Lakers are looking at him. So that is one guy I'm sneaky, very, very high on and curious to see how that goes.
With Dunleavy, just really quick, honestly, I think it's going to be the status quo. As much as it doesn't seem like the status quo was the trade pool for an old guy, I think that was going to happen even if Bob Myers stayed. Like, I don't know. Dunleavy and Myers are so close. They worked together for so long. I'm sure Bob Myers still texts Mike Dunleavy once in a while. You know what I'm saying? And I think Poole was going to probably be gone no matter who the GM was. So not really tripping about that. I think Draymond's going to be back too. I'm not really trying to analyze that too much because I feel like the Warriors just told them, go find a contract offer and then we'll give you $3 million more on every year. And then you'll stick with us. I think that's probably what happened. They gave him like a preliminary 20 million for 3 years offer and then went from there. Kuzma, Bruce Brown, makes no sense to pick up your player options. I think Bruce Brown is gone for sure. I think Bruce Brown's going to get closer to a $15 million contract than like a $10 million contract, which is what I think the Nuggets can re-sign him for. And I just, if I'm also like a bad team, like if I'm like the Spurs, why not throw like a fronted 4 years, 80 million at Bruce Brown? And then hopefully in the last year of that contract, he's like 15 million, which would be cheap 4 years from now with the cap going up and stuff. So I don't know. I would kind of keep my eyes out on that. I think a bad team might come in with like the Bojan Bogdanovic, like the Pistons contract, where they're just giving him a bag to just be an asset.
Yeah.
Moving on from there. So we get the Bradley Beal trade. He gets traded for Chris Paul. Crazy trade. Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, multiple seconds, and then the 4 swaps. So this is the thing that I think is a little interesting. It's 4 swaps. They're not outright first, but who's going to be on this Suns team in 2030?
Max, can I react?
Yeah.
Max, man, we talked about the Heat, how good of a fit that would be. And I just seen something about Mickey Arison not being able to be convinced by Pat Riley that it would be worth it. Even that being said, I think that we both think that would have been a better fit. I don't get it. I don't get it. Maybe somebody smarter than me can explain what's going on. Maybe, as Eric Spoelstra said, to the untrained eye, one can see what's going on here. But I just don't get what you're doing. If you're the Phoenix Suns and you just got bounced due to a lack of depth by the Denver Nuggets because you have 2 amazing guys that can put up 80 points per game and win you 2 of those games, when they do that, the logic of let's go get a guy that's going to put us into the second apron for maybe multiple years. We can't do more with our other free agents. I don't know how they're going to get their depth. And we're pretty much going to add a guy who's dropped his points value by about 7 in the last 2 seasons and is maybe a top 40 player, top 35 player, essentially a lesser version of Devin Booker. And we're going to just try to run it back with a guy with DeAndre Ayton. I don't know how we feel about DeAndre Ayton. I just don't really get where the Suns are going. This is a big boom or bust thing. It could work out, but essentially it seems like their goal is let's score 151, and then we might end up giving 152 every single night because Devin Booker is not a plus defender, and at this point, Kevin Durant's not a plus defender. I don't get their vision. Max, do you get their vision at all here? I mean, and maybe you could argue devil's advocate.
I don't get the vision, but I think it's an asset management vision in a weird way. So, when the team was struggling in the middle of last year and they had a chance to go get KD for just 4 first-round picks. So in retrospect, like Gobert got traded for like 6, right? If you can go get
Yeah.
KD, yeah, if you can go get KD for 4 outright firsts, you're probably gonna do it, right? They had to give up McCall Bridges. They didn't know what McCall Bridges was about to be. I mean, I was very high on
Yeah.
McCall Bridges. I wouldn't have done that, but it is what it is.
Mhm.
Like that was an asset management trade. Even if KD's older, you can turn around and trade KD for more assets than what you gave up for him, right? And then Beal, if you look at it this way, how else were they going to upgrade like this Chris Paul plus Landry Shamet slot? Like the swaps by themselves were only going to have so much value, right? Like if you were going to trade Chris Paul in 2 swaps for like someone that's not Bradley Beal, like what were you going to get, And so I kind of think in some way, like Chris Paul and Landry Shamet were probably playing a combined 40 minutes per playoff game by the end of efficient minutes. Sorry, Chris Paul was definitely playing like 35 minutes, but of like they were probably playing 40 efficient minutes of basketball combined together. And Bradley Beal's probably going to in the playoffs give you 40 minutes of efficient basketball. And all you had to do is trade those 2 guys and some pick swaps. What's the long-term vision? I don't know. That's something that's beyond me. But that's been a question since they extended DeAndre Ayton on the max. Yeah, I think they're a team that needs to win in the next like 2 years, and even then, I don't think they will. And John Collins, we'll get to him later. John Collins just got salary dumped for nothing. DeAndre Ayton, his value is nothing either, in my opinion.
It's not high, that's for sure.
Yeah. I'm not a DeAndre Ayton believer, to be honest, but it is what it is. Okay, so this Beal trade, we'll have to revisit it. But on the morning, I think it's the morning or the day before draft night, we get a report that Kristaps Porzingis is going to the Boston Celtics. Malcolm Brogdon would be going to the Clippers, and Marcus Morris would be going to the Wizards. Eventually, Malcolm Brogdon either fails his physical or the Clippers couldn't get medicals on him in time, like information on him in time, and it breaks down. So the Clippers out of the picture. The Celtics immediately shift. They send Marcus Smart for 2 first-round picks, and they get the 2 first-round picks. They redirect Tyus Bones to the Wizards. Wizards send Porzingis to the Celtics. I thought it was a great trade from the Celtics. They got 2 first-round picks and Porzingis out of a Marcus Smart like guy whose voice was kind of done in the locker room. Thought it was great.
On paper, seems great. I'm a big fan of it. My emotional self will come out a little bit here. Marcus Smart was with the Celtics for 9 years. He was the bridge with the kind of post Rondo into the IT years in the middle of the decade when we were trying to figure everything out, when we were starting to overachieve. It's going to be tough. And I know he's going to get a standing ovation every single time he comes back to the Garden. As much of a headache as sometimes his decision-making could be, he really was the team's emotional soul for so long. And just as a Boston fan, there was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of trust. There were a lot of ups and downs. It would have been fun to see him win a chip with us. Who knows? Maybe when he's older, he'll come back. I'm just waxing about him. But I am hoping, like you're saying, that I'm not comparing the status of this comp that I'm about to give you, but I'm wondering / hoping from a Celtics fan perspective, the Raptors, you have a franchise guy, DeMar DeRozan, with you for 9 years. You say, okay, we got it. We got to figure out something. You get Kawhi Leonard, you win the chip the next year. I'm not saying that Smart is DeRozan or that Kristaps is Kawhi, but I am thinking this is kind of that gut-wrenching decision that sometimes a team has to make when they just can't get over the hump. I do think it was a fantastic trade. 7'3" shooter. He can play with Rob Will. He can give Al Horford fewer minutes now. You have that big man rotation that we needed. The only thing I would like to see is, one, can Derek White really step into, and I think he can, this starting point guard role consistently? And the other one is, how are we going to keep the ball moving? Because that was a big issue that we had in the playoffs this past year, a lot of ISO ball, especially when it came down to it. I do think, with the Jaylen Brown injury that did, limit him a little bit. But other than that, I think this is a pretty awesome trade. I'm excited to see Kristaps. He had a crazy good season last year. I think 23, 8, and 3 on 38% from three. So, and he was as healthy as he's ever been. And now he has two other big men that he can kind of rotate with. So, doesn't need all that load on him. So, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I thought it's very interesting. They basically like we'll have three injury prone big men, or I guess Horford's not injury prone, but he's old. Three guys that are kind of injury risks in the front court, and we'll all play them like diminished minutes, and we'll kind of get better returns on them in those minutes. I thought that was interesting. That's like a funny philosophy, and I think it's like a pretty good one, to be honest. Um, Marcus Smart, as much as like you're gonna miss like having another guard on the team, I think guard is the position you guys have been able to just consistently fill and find new guys. Like, so I'm not too worried about that on your guys' end. And I don't think Marcus Smart was the best passer in the world. He kept the ball moving, but you know, he's not Tyus Jones, who went to the Wizards. And I almost would have liked to see the Celtics just keep Tyus Jones in that deal. I don't know how the salaries would have matched up, though, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I thought Tyus Jones as like a backup point guard to Derek White, that really could have started making a lot of sense too. But you get the 2 first-round picks, and like, who knows? Maybe you flip those for a point guard at the deadline if you feel like you still need one. I thought it was interesting. I also think Marcus Smart, you get him into the Grizzlies. I think it was a good trade for them. I don't know what their like end game group looks like. That's my kind of concern with the Grizzlies. I would have liked to keep my assets to go get like a small forward or like a power forward who's like a really good defender. Because what are they going to run Desmond Bane at the small forward in crunch time? That was a little weird to me. But as a culture fit, as an all defensive player, you got the defensive player of the year from last year for 2 first-round picks and Tyus Jones, who you were probably kind of trying to trade anyways, because he wasn't getting the minutes that he wanted. So I thought Memphis also came out pretty well in this deal as well.
Well, hey, Max, something you just said, fact check this, if the contracts make sense. Thinking about that small forward type of guy who's a great defender, how would OG Anunoby look on the Grizzlies? With that, and then you could do a late small ball lineup with John Morant, Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane at the 3, OG Anunoby at the 4, and then Triple J at the 5. You have the defensive versatility. You have some of the shooting with Desmond Bane, and I don't know how good of a shooter Anunoby is, but I do remember him hitting a 3-pointer against the Celtics in the bubble that broke my heart. And so you've got the defensive versatility from back-to-back DPOYs of the year. I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah, I think they have like this. Marcus Smart and OG Anunoby have about the same contract, 18 mil a year, which is kind of funny. But I don't like they do have moves. They could hypothetically now double down and go get Anunoby, but it's never been like the Grizzlies style to just start trading a ton of assets. I think this was like the Grizzlies' big move, probably. And I might have liked to see them just go after Anunoby rather than Smart. Like, I think that fit might have been better, but Anunoby would have costed more assets because the Raptors are psychos, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's kind of the issue there. Like, I think you would have had to trade like 4 first-round picks and Tyus Jones for Anunoby just because that's the Raptors' asking price rather than just like 2 firsts and Tyus Jones. And then if you need a small forward, you can go get one later. Buy low on someone, figure that out later.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving on, we'll get to Washington in a bit. Then we get on June 22nd, we get Chris Middleton, who opts out of his player option. And you and I were kind of caught off guard by this because you only opt out of a $40 million player option if you know you have better offers elsewhere. Think there's no chance that the Bucks move on from him unless it's like a sign and trade situation. And even then, I'd be very shocked. He just probably had a offer waiting from another team that was really good that he would have been down to take, and then he's using his leverage by opting out. So I think the Bucks will give him the number that he wants.
Yeah, curious to see where that kind of goes. Obviously, he's betting on himself a little bit after a couple of tough seasons with his injury. That's $40 million guaranteed. Maybe he's looking at 2 years, 60. I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are going to look like. But I'm a little bit higher on Chris Middleton than I think other people are. I still do think he's 32, 33 years old. In NBA years in the 2020s, that's not as old as it used to be. Yes, his injuries are a little bit concerning. And the Bucks really need to figure out other ways to kind of bolster some of their depth around them, because you can't just rely on heavy Chris Middleton minutes in the regular season anymore. But he is still a fantastic shot maker, can be a 50, 40, 90 kind of guy. If he can give you that 18, 5 and 4 game that you need. I think that this is a solid move. I'm curious to see where they go, but like you said, I really don't know. I could see him flirting with other teams for sure. Maybe I was thinking Sacramento for a bit until Sacramento made their decision with Harrison Barnes, but it'll be interesting. He's betting on himself for sure.
Yeah, I think the thing about Middleton that's interesting is that I'm very low on him. I mean, we've talked about it. I thought he got pretty overrated from their NBA Finals run. But he's still probably the best small forward on the market right now. Like, I'd probably still rather have him than Kuzma. But and then again, on the other hand, he was terrible last year. Like, Middleton was underratedly terrible last year, in my opinion. So that's a little interesting when a guy has his worst career season, hits free agency, and he's now 32. We'll see. Worst career season since he became a good player. I know his rookie year and stuff like that, he was a little bit slow developing. But yeah, I think he'll be back with the Bucks. I'd be shocked if it was anything else. And if it was something else, it'd have to be like a sign and trade going elsewhere. But I'd be very, very surprised. Same day, we get an extension of the Wizards trade. So Chris Paul, who had just been traded to the Warriors, gets redirected to my Golden State Warriors for Jordan Poole and a top 20 protected 2030 first round pick and a 2027 second rounder. So really, this is a Chris Paul for Jordan Poole trade. Chris Paul, who has a partially guaranteed contract again next year. And Jordan Poole, who's in year one of a 4-year max contract now with the Wizards. Anthony, do you have any comments before I kind of give my spiel about this?
Before you dive in,
Yeah.
Well, man, we could do a whole podcast on the history between Chris Paul and the Warriors itself, and can't really call it a rivalry because a rivalry would insinuate that there's a pretty even balance of winning on both sides. The last time Chris Paul was able to beat the Warriors was before they became a dynasty. So, but he challenged them pretty hard in 2018 on the Rockets. He always showed up against the Warriors. He was never afraid to back down against the Warriors. So give him credit for that. Obviously, we've seen things about Draymond Green talking about his opinion on Chris Paul. We've seen plenty. The links between Chris Paul and Steph are huge. So it's a really goofy situation in my mind to see him on the Warriors as a humor standpoint. As a basketball fit, I think that Chris Paul has such a high basketball IQ that I have heard a lot of the concerns of him kind of slowing the ball down as the quote unquote point guard. God, he is so good. Every single team he's gone to immediately has benefited from his presence there. And every single team that he's gone to has been such a different style of playing, whether it was later in his career, going to OKC, going to the Thunder, going to the Suns. So I think he's going to be great. I mean, he's a great passer. He can be right in the middle of the floor. He's a shorter version on offense where Draymond Green has kind of been that space. Now you have to honor him in the mid-range because that's his bread and butter. He's obviously not the defensive player that Draymond Green is, but extremely high IQ guy. And he can sit down with Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green and say, hey, guys, what do we need to do to go ahead? Like, all that stuff from the 2010s, that's in the past. Like, let's keep this moving. If he can stay healthy, 25 minutes a game. I think it was projected that he was going to be in the starting lineup from what I've seen. But I could also see him running a lot of bench minutes and just killing it. So I personally like the move a lot. I think this is a really cool move. And I'm excited to see where it goes. How are we feeling, Maxie?
I thought it was a great move. It's finally the move away from the 2 timeline situation, which I thought was great. Flat out, Chris Paul was a better basketball player last year than Jordan Poole, and I didn't think it was particularly close. Chris Paul shot 38% from 3. He averaged 13 and 9 in the regular season, and then across the board in the playoffs, he had better stats than Jordan Poole. I think the fit is a lot better than Jordan Poole. We've never seen Jordan Poole's like a heat check guy. We've never seen a heat check guy outside of Klay Thompson and Steph Curry be like good on the Warriors because we have Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. I think Chris Paul's best comparison is not necessarily like a Draymond type player. I think we literally saw Chris Paul and like Sean Livingston like 8 years ago, right? And Sean Livingston was playing 20, 25 minutes on the Warriors, and that's all we needed. We don't need Chris Paul to play 35 minutes at all. Like we have a lot and enough other aspects of the team with like Looney, GP2. If Moody develops, if Kuminga develops a bit, like we're gonna have 7, 8 guys now. And if Chris Paul just plays 25, that'll be good enough. He doesn't need to play 35. I think the fit is great. Livingston really unlocked a lot of Steph and Clay stuff when he was there, and those guys were younger. I think Chris Paul is going to do the same. Defensively, I don't love the move, to be honest, but Jordan Poole was terrible defensively. Like Chris Paul is way better defensively than Chris Paul. Chris Paul is way better defensively than Jordan Poole. Overall, I thought it was a great trade. And guess what? If things go south and if it goes terribly, decline the team option next year, and we're out. It's a funny way to get away from the two timeline situation. It's the most ironic and hilarious manner in which we could do this, is trading Jordan Poole, who helped us win a chip last year, for Chris Paul, the most hated player in the Warriors fan base history. But I thought it was a great move. I think the big winner from this trade, is Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole is going to be really good on the Wizards. I'm actually like totally a believer. I think this is just what he needed, right? Like he needs a chance to cook. And anytime he started last year, he's averaged 25 a game. Like he's going to average 25 to 30 a game next year on a Wizards team that is playing no defense and not trying to win. And guess what? I think he's going to look a lot better than we think doing it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, him and Tyus Jones, too. Like, Tyus Jones about to get a lot of run on the Wizards. It's going to be fun to see. I have him on one of my fantasy teams, and so I went ahead and selected him as keeper because he's going to put up points for me.
Absolutely. So that's the deal with that trade, and that's the end of that whole Beal, all those like trades and the Wizards trades. So
it's over. It's over. Congrats. Thank you. Congratulations to the Wizards for 5 years later deciding to lean into the rebuild. We're all proud of you.
Congrats to the Wizards for waiting till the year after Wemby to blow it up.
Yeah.
Great, man.
Yeah. That's one of the best drafts. Yeah.
So a few days after this Chris Paul pull trade, Naz Reid signs for to the T-Wolves. I'll have a take on that probably a little bit later, but I thought that was a great pickup. I couldn't believe this was that cheap. This feels like a Kevon Looney deal where Looney's getting paid $7 million a year this year, It's like it just makes me continue to punch air about the Rudy Gobert trade because you have now 3 centers on your team, and I wish it was just Cat and Naz Reid, because Naz Reid, I saw something where since I think maybe it was the trade deadline last season, he averaged the second most points per minute after Joel Embiid. So dude's a stud. Huge fan of that trade for real, and great value. Yeah, I loved I don't know. I love Naz Reid, a great player, and he's also like very active, fun to watch. After that, we get John Collins, who goes to Utah basically on a salary dump for Rudy Gay. Thought it was, of all the salary dumps we saw, probably the lowest value, like in terms of I kind of feel like the Jazz could have gotten an asset from the Hawks. I kind of feel like you could have, I don't know. Because John Collins has money on his contract left. Like, I'm surprised the Jazz were so open to taking on that terrible contract. Rudy Gay goes the other way. He's pretty washed. He's not amazing. But he expires this year. John Collins is a few years left and basically making $20 million a year. If that Bertans trade happened like that, and the Mavericks had to give up an asset, I'm surprised Atlanta didn't have to.
Right. Well, yeah, this might be another case of we need new scenery for John Collins. Yeah, I still think that he can be a great player. He was a great shooter. And it can be kind of interesting to see him pair with Walker Kessler and Lauren Markkanen up in Utah. I think it's just a trade of scenery thing on his end. And then for Atlanta, I think this was good. The writing was on the wall for John Collins for the last 3 years, but we were waiting for this to happen. And now they can kind of really lean into, now they have their 2 big men that they want to work with, and they have their point guard. So maybe they can make some other decisions. They got Sadiq Bey, and they got Bogdanovich. So I think they have a pretty well-rounded team, and it's great to be able to now have this cap space so they can go after other guys.
Jalen Johnson. Yeah, this Hawks team is kind of interesting. I just like it better with like less John Collins. Like I thought it was a great deal for the Hawks. I could not believe that they found someone just willing to like inherit the whole contract. Like I couldn't believe it. And if I'm the Jazz, I do think though, if I'm the Jazz and a guy like John Collins this year goes out and shoots 39% from three for the whole season, someone's going to try to pick him up, right? So he'll be easily flippable, I think.
Great asset. Great asset if it works out.
And then if he's bad, like who cares? Like you're a bad team anyways. So
yeah. Very low risk, very high.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. From there, Vucevic re-signs with the Bulls for 3 years, 60 mil. I don't have anything to say on that. That's just the Bulls are a terrible organization, to be honest. Yeah.
The contract itself, I think, is okay value just based on where numbers are these days. I think Vucevic is a 20 mil guy, but it just kind of shows that they're a bit rudderless right now. I don't know where their direction is. They need more of a defensive presence, and we can go look back at that trade a few years ago for Franz Wagner and for Wendell Carter Jr. Well, I don't know what they were thinking, but I guess they're leaning into this core, and so we'll see what happens. Go Bulls!
Yeah, I think Naz Reid's better than Nikola Vucevic, so they paid double. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I could not believe that, and it's fully guaranteed. Like that is irresponsible. Fully guaranteeing it, like, that's not okay. In my opinion.
Max, you want to talk about you want to leave our big white whale for the end and talk about the last couple of guys before we move on to the big fish?
Yeah, I'm down with that. Word. So yesterday, Josh Hart picks up his player option. Very interesting. Yep. I am assuming that means there's an extension on the way or there's a trade on the way with a guaranteed extension off the back of that. I cannot imagine Josh Hart, like, what was it, a $12 million player option? I could not imagine him getting anywhere close to that low money in free agency, but not a lot of free agent money left. So, we'll see. A really interesting move. So Herb Jones is coming up on the last year of his rookie deal this year. And so what the Pelicans did is they declined his team option. And since they have bird rights, they can actually re-sign him to and go over the cap. But they can only outright offer him a 4-year, $51 million extension. So they're kind of like, here's your extension that we're guaranteeing you, 4 years, 51 million. But if someone else comes around and offers you an offer sheet, we'll just match whatever that is. I kind of would love to see a team like just say, oh, are you really going to match it? You have like CJ, BI, Zion, all these guys are paying. Are you really going to match a 4-year, $100 million Herb Jones offer? And just like if the Kings came out and just $20 million a year for Herb Jones, and like then the Pelicans are like, oh my God, like I thought it was a risky move. I assume no team will do that, and he'll be back in the Pelicans for, again, 4 years, 51, or 3 years, 51, or whatever it is. But we'll see.
Yeah, I don't really view Herb Jones yet as a 20 mil a year type player personally. I think he is a great player. I think he's super young, a great defensive player, very high IQ kind of guy. So if he got signed for that, I wouldn't be overly surprised. I'm kind of with you where I could see him kind of falling in the middle of that. But great move to opt out of that last 1.8 mil, because he is not worth $1.8 million a year. He's
but it was a team option though. That was the thing. The team rejected it because they're worried that next year they're gonna if he has a huge year, he's eligible for a full max next year.
I see. Okay, so it's a bit of this like kind of cat and mouse game with both sides going on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you're Herb Jones, you're like, I kind of want to guarantee 50 million, but also maybe I get more if I wait. But also anyone who ever waits to get a bigger contract always ends up like getting hurt or something, like the Nerlens Noel and Dennis Schroeder situations, so it's like, last thing, or yeah, last thing before we get to the bombshell is Barnes re-signs with the Kings for 3 years, 54 million. That was the only move that's happened so far that absolutely breaks my brain. I cannot understand this move for the life of me.
Yeah, I'm with you, bro. I guess like on the numbers, it looks fine, but I just don't really think outside of veteran presence and leadership aspects, I don't really think Harrison Barnes is helpful for what the Sacramento Kings need. I didn't really get this one at all. I thought they could have used this money on different guys for sure. Like I had referenced with Chris Middleton. Like you would even reference with Herb Jones potentially in
Yeah.
a couple seasons. Now you don't have that option, and you're kind of locked into this. Are they going to try to flip him? Maybe. Are they going to try to hope that he has a great year or something like that? I feel like we kind of know who Harrison Barnes is at this point. Game 4 against
Yep.
the Warriors. It's Harrison Barnes for the win. I don't think anybody thought that shot was going in. I know that shot wasn't going in, and that thing bricked so high it went outside of the pan of where you could see it on the camera. Like, and you saw this as well, dude. You dealt with this, man.
Yes.
If
Yes.
people talk about the Draymond suspension, people can kind of go after Curry for some of the not great shooting against the Cavs. People talk about all these things that happen with Bogut getting hurt, with Iguodala a little bit hampered with, but in reality, if Harrison Barnes hits a few more threes, the Warriors win that series.
Yeah.
The Warriors win the series, and so it's just one of those things. I don't get it. I don't like it. The Kings, you're on this great path. Just keep doing great path things. I don't know. Maybe they see something we don't see.
It broke my brain. I could not understand it. They basically traded out of their first round pick and traded Rashawn Holmes, which was, I thought that was a good deal to then go get someone else. And they just used that money that they traded. They basically traded away their own first round pick to re-sign Harrison Barnes. And they do have money to go get another guy. That is one thing. But wouldn't you rather go get there's so many other players available. Just go get Bruce Brown. This is kind of the contract I feel like Bruce Brown's gonna get. I'd much rather have Bruce Brown than Harrison Barnes. Like I could, or again,
younger.
This is a bigger contract than what Herb Jones is gonna get. Why not just offer Herb Jones that contract? Because I actually think Herb Jones is probably as good as Harrison Barnes is right now. Just go offer Herb Jones that contract, and then if the Pelicans match, okay, so be it. Now I can go sign Harrison Barnes. I don't think the line is like long outside of Harrison Barnes' door with teams just like knocking down the door trying to sign him, bro. Like, I don't know. Like, is Harrison Barnes like that big of an asset? I assume Mike Brown or someone in that organization loves him. But that was mind-boggling. This is the last chance that the Kings have to upgrade their roster before they get into like salary cap hell for the next few years. And they use it to re-sign Harrison Barnes. That is like an irresponsible basketball move. You're signing an old guy to a long contract when you had cap space for the last time to build around this core. I literally, it makes me so mad. Just like go get Kyle Kuzma. And if he doesn't fit, you can trade him at the deadline. Harrison Barnes, if he doesn't fit, you're fucked. I can't believe it. It's an irresponsible trade. And especially when you're clearing up cap space and you're going to have cap space to get one of these big dogs in free agency or even making a run at them. Harrison Barnes is still going to be sitting there. Harrison Barnes is still going to be there on day 3 of free agency. If you tell him, yo, just wait a bit, we might have this contract waiting for you. He's still going to be there. Like mind-boggling, mind-bending. And they're going to get someone else, right? And it's going to be, I think they're going to get another free agent. And that'll be a good addition. But if they do, for example, if they renegotiate Sabonis' contract for this year with that extra cap space and then extend him, and that's what they do with the cap space, is just running it back completely. That is an irresponsible move from this front office. It's a front office that rarely has messed up, but sorry, I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
I think you stated it perfectly. So I am now ready to move on from talking about Harrison Barnes for sure. But
that's enough Harrison Barnes. Yeah, that's enough Harrison Barnes content for a long time. So early, This is where we get to the tea. Early
Woo.
yesterday, there's an anonymous Twitter account, dropping dimes 20. Sends out a tweet. James Harden's about to opt in, and then they're going to work on a trade. I beat Shams and Woj to it. Where are they at? He sends a tweet. Just 20,000 followers, or 2,000 followers at this point. Sorry. Over the course of days, the rumor kind of keeps steaming and keeps building up, and he's tweeting other stuff that kind of makes sense. And finally, Shams and Woj, boom, Harden's opting in, and they're working on a trade. Dropping dimes, gets 40,000 followers in like the next 6 hours. I think it's banned off Twitter. So, first of all, that's some tea. That's some spicy stuff. Woj's guys just took out this guy who got the tea before them. But what does this mean for James Harden? He rejects a $36 million or he opts into a $36 million player option. And now Philly is going to try to move him. What sort of return do you think he can get? And also, why do you think James Harden did this? Do you think there were no other suitors, low key?
Well, why he did it, we can talk about the push and pull factor analogy, what pushes you away from a team and what draws you to a new team. I think I would like to start with the push factors first. So why does he want to get out of Philly? What was working, what wasn't working? Because the talent is there. The talent in Philly is there, right? And in terms of grass is always greener. He's older. If they can make some moves, if he can kind of take a bit of a backseat to Maxey, I can't not see them figuring something out. But maybe he just kind of thought that their time was up there. But I don't really get it. I saw this hilarious Bill Simmons tweet that was like, "Congratulations to James Harden now winning the most trade requests since the year 2000. He's now up to 3." So I don't know. I think he's just like, okay, I'm done with this team. I want to go find another place. But yeah, I don't know. Why do you think he went Philly before we move on to other stuff?
I have a hot take. I don't think this is his choice. I think if he wanted to leave Philly and he was like urgently trying to get out himself, I think there would have been a team with salary cap space that would have offered him a contract. Like, I think. But then on the other side, like the fact that he opted into a $36 million, like, I don't know, player option makes me feel like he actually had zero suitors. I think he looked around in free agency. He said, if I hit free agency, I'm screwed. There's no one with any cap space that wants to spend it on me. And then if I opt in, Philadelphia is kind of pushing me out because he would have just signed an extension in Philly if Philly had given him the money. Like, that's the thing. Even if he didn't really want to stay, he would have signed an extension had Philly offered him it, and then you figure out a trade later. Like, they would have done an extension and trade, not an opt-in and trade. So I actually think it might have been like Philly's like, yo, they probably came to James. They were like, yo, like, this is your extension offer. Like, no other teams with salary cap space want you. We know that. So just opt in and we'll find a trade. So we can get assets for you and you can go to somewhere else, like a team that's over the cap. And that if they give up assets, they'll give James Harden an extension too, I kind of think this is like a weird, it works out for everyone low key. And I think I low key think the market for James Harden in free agency specifically was probably empty, like, which I can't believe. I'm pretty surprised by it, but it kind of means teams might be getting smarter.
Maybe we just spent about 3 minutes talking about the Kings re-signing Harrison Barnes. So there is always some team, and then the Bulls re-signing Vucevic. So, it does kind of go both ways, where sometimes we're like, the league is too smart and they've nailed some player down, and then other times they go in a different direction. So, but also on the note we're talking about, so the two teams that we've mentioned, I think one heavily favored over the other right now is the Clippers and also the Knicks. My quick bit on the Knicks is Max and I have been talking about this. Also, real quick, shout out to Max for texting me about 10 minutes before the announcement that Max reached out to me and said, hey, it's going to be a sign and trade for Harden, not sure what team. And then literally 10 minutes later, lo and behold, we find out that is what they've decided to do. Great call, Max. Congratulations.
It just made too much. It just
So
made too much sense. Like I was looking around at the free agency market, I was like, no one's gonna offer him a big contract in FA, and I don't think Philly wants to get tied up in the James Harden business. So that's why I was like, yo, sign and trade. And then Shams like, I got you, bro. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, literally, yeah, let me help you out. But
yeah.
I guess in terms of Knicks, I don't know who or like what contracts match to make this trade work. I'm not sure if you want to give up a guy like quickly. But I do think it would be hilarious imagining an all Knicks like lefty starting lineup or
It would
something
be
like that, or
hilarious.
like one of the five guys with Harden, Brunson, Barrett, and Randall. And I was joking, like, go get Sabonis or something and make him your five, and then you have all lefty. That nobody will know what to do. But if he does go to the Knicks, personally, I don't like that at all. I like what the Knicks are building. And I don't think the move of, I've said this before on our previous podcast, I'm not a fan of going and getting the quote unquote established superstar already. I'm a fan of a guy where you go, usually there's a few exceptions. Kevin Garnett is an example of a guy I can think of off the top of my head, but for the most part, you think of a guy like DeMarcus Cousins, who's a guy that people go get. Anthony Davis, that might be the only other example I can really think of quickly off the top of my head, who's a star. I don't really like the idea of James Harden going to the Knicks. I think he has so much his own veteran aspect of things and the way he goes about how he plays basketball. I think he's a bit of a ball stopper, and I think the Knicks are trying to build a culture that he doesn't fit. So I don't think it'll be helpful for them, although it would be fantastic for TV. And then he is the Clippers. So, but Max, what are you thinking about all this?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it for a while. I think there's pretty much no chance he goes to the Knicks. And
Mm-hmm.
last time I said this about a player was Bradley Beal and the Suns, right? So,
Yeah.
like I'll probably be wrong. But I just think like if I'm the Knicks, is that really what I want to add to the situation? I think it's the same thing that happened like the Rockets and the Harden were linked for so long. And then the Rockets are kind of like, do we need to get into the Harden business? Like, what does this give us? Like, and the team that would get the most out of it is the Clippers. Like, I think that's actually a Paul George, Kawhi, and James Harden thing could actually be kind of interesting. They probably don't make any noise in the playoffs as per usual, but I think it could be interesting. And then the other team I think that makes sense is the Suns, but they would need to find a way to redirect Aiton. Like you redirect Aiton for assets that you then send to Philly for Harden. But
Uh,
if you're able to get assets for Aiton, you're not flipping it for Harden. At least I would hope you're not, you
yeah.
know? Yeah. Which would be ridiculous. I will say if they could get Harden on that Suns team, I would think it's hilarious. Like they would win like 40 games just off of fit being terrible. They would not be good. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I don't know. My prediction is he goes to the Clippers. I think it's already done, to be honest.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff, even overnight. Like Clippers is really heating up. Who gets traded back to who goes back to Philly?
Terrence Mann. I think the Morris contract probably even maybe it gets redirected, but the Morris contract, and then you also have. So this is weird. First of all, Brian Windhorst is such an idiot. He was like, "Bro, the tea leaves were on the cards when they rejected Aaron Gordon's team option. Bro, if they were gonna trade for Harden, you want the contract to trade for Harden." Anyways, hate Brian Windhorst. A homie just spews false information on TV in my opinion. But Eric Gordon, had they picked up his team option, he's in that trade for sure. So I'm a little bit concerned. Like, what you're going to send Terrence Mann, you're going to send Marcus Morris contract, and then they have a few other guys on like kind of middling to bigger deals. Maybe it's like a Zubats or something. They're kind of going to be the Suns just in California, you know. So we'll see. I don't know. Sorry, just random Windhorst hate outburst, but that was that. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
I do think with the caveat, which is always a caveat for the Clippers of health, I I am curious to see how James Harden could do, knowing that there's two other wing guys that are also great defensive players. I maintain, and I think we both saw this. We were waxing about him so much in the playoffs before he got hurt. Kawhi was. I also saw a report that he's fully healthy again, but we never know how that happens. He was amazing. He was amazing in the playoffs, and I do think that when Harden sees that there's a guy that can quote unquote kind of bail him out or whatever, if he's not having a great game, I think it makes Harden a little bit more relaxed and he can defer to like understanding the best player is there on the team. So I think the highest ceiling, like you're saying, for sure is the Clippers. Like if they can kind of mesh this together, if he can just buy into the system where he is the third best player on the team, and kind of go along with the Westbrook mentality of like, I just am going to do what I can to help this team win and use my veteran savvy to help out. That would be a fun thing to see. But you know, that's health contingent for sure.
I would love to see Harden rebrand into a guy like that, but if he was going to do that, he would have done it in Philly. I just think we know who Harden is. He's a high usage guy who's not super clutch and kind of inconsistent. And like, if he's not playing next to Jokic or like Giannis, it's going to be hard to win a chip with him at this stage in his career. But that's just my opinion. Finally, Anthony, our last section before we wrap it up, I'm going to throw you some quick fire free agents. I'm going to say a name. And I just need first team that comes to mind where you think they're going to end up. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Lock in. Russ Westbrook.
I think he stays with the Clippers.
Dylan Brooks.
Shanghai Sharks. No, I'm just kidding. Dylan Brooks, I could see him either a contending team looking for him or a young team trying to find some sort of veteran leader who has a little bit of extra cap space.
I could kind of see the Rockets making a move just because they have extra cap space. Bruce Brown.
Sure. I had said this already, but Lakers, Mavs, I think were the teams he's looking at.
What's the prediction?
Lakers for 12.
Dante DiVincenzo.
Ooh, he go a lot of places. I don't know if I can nail a team with him.
I think all the reports say the Knicks. It wouldn't surprise me if it was somewhere else, but he's going to get the mid-level from some team. Yeah. Draymond.
Man, I think he stays with the Warriors.
Yeah, I think he stays with the Warriors. I think there's little chance he leaves. Kyrie,
man. Lakers, maybe. Don't know how the numbers work on that. Trying to think of a team that could really use a great offensive point guard. My mind is drawing a blank, man. Maybe the Heat, maybe the Lakers.
I think he's back with the Mavs. They gave up assets for him. Did you see he took a meeting with the Suns like a few days ago?
I didn't see that.
What is he going to say? What he's going to sign for the minimum? Like he's trying to create leverage that he doesn't have. I think him and the Mavs are kind of in a staring contest, and he ends up going back there on like 20 million rather than like 30. That's kind of my prediction.
Yeah.
Cam Johnson.
He could fit on so many different teams, like the style that he is. And so I think he's the kind of guy where you can offer him like 4 years, 80 mil, easy.
That's why, like again, Kings, what are we doing? Go offer Cam Johnson. Right. Like, yeah.
Exactly.
Kyle Kuzma.
Ooh, Kyle Kuzma. Probably goes back to a contending team. I think a team like the Clippers could use him. I think the Kings are a team that could have used him. But I do think he'll get a decent bag. I think he could command 27, 28 mil a year. But again, there's so many teams that could go after him right now.
I think he's back in the Wizards next year. That's my hot take. I think the money market for him is drying up a little bit, and the Wizards can kind of just give him whatever contract. And again, he'll be on the same timeline as Poole, and you can just flip him later.
Right.
We'll see. I really could see him coming back. Middleton.
Okay, so you think he's going to stay with the Bucks? I don't know. Maybe he takes a team-friendly contract with the Heat. I think he wants to win right now. So I don't really see him moving too far. I'm trying to think of another team that he could fit well. I think he could fit well with the Grizzlies if he's on a team-friendly deal. Great shooting, great spacing. They already have good defenders. So maybe those two teams.
Yeah, the issue is like the Heat and the Grizzlies are both over the cap. So you're sending like you'd also not only like get him and extend him if you're doing a sign and trade, but like you also have to send assets back. I just kind of feel like and because of that, it'll probably end up being the Bucks. Austin Reeves.
Ooh, I think he stays with the Lakers.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be a lower contract than the 4 years, 100 million that we're seeing, but it'll be like 4 years, 80. And I think it'll be a good deal. D'Lo.
I also think he will stay with the Lakers, although I don't know if I love the fit.
Yeah, I think it's either he stays with the Lakers or he's gonna get the mid-level somewhere. Like his stock's fallen. Fred
Yeah.
VanVleet.
The reports are saying 2 years, 83 mil to the Rockets. Don't hate it. Don't hate it at all. They've got a lot of cap space. They could use a veteran point guard.
I love it. It's just like an organizer, man. I love it. I think I said that on the podcast that they should go after him. That too a few times
Yeah.
ago.
And in a short contract for a lot of money. I think that's fine.
And then just
Yeah,
partially
perfect.
guarantee some of the back end years. Like figure that out later. Grant Williams, your guy.
Grant Williams. I think if we sign him, we can't get a mid-level exception guy. I'm not sure about the numbers there, but so I don't know. I'd rather we sign him for cheap if we do sign him. I don't think he's worth like 15 million that he wants to command. But could he end up, like we were saying, on a young team with a little bit extra cap space, like a Spurs kind of thing, where he's trying to get some like toughness going? Or is he gonna kind of go to a contender on a cheaper contract? Really, I have no idea where the tea leaves are. I think, but Celtics versus the field, probably leaning Celtics, but not sure.
I kind of agree with you. Celtics versus the field, leaning Celtics, same thing. I just think guys like Grant Williams and his new CBA are just gonna get totally screwed. Like these are the guys
Yeah.
that teams would be down to like extend or spend money on to like go over the luxury tax to like give yourself an extra chance of winning the chip. Now it just doesn't even. It's not even worth it. Who did I miss? Gabe Vincent. I think he's back with the Heat. You don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was perfect for the Heat. I mean, kind of ran out of steam in the finals, much like Strus did. But I think both of those guys are very Heat culture, and if they can go get themselves, they really need a star. They need a star caliber player with Jimmy Butler, and if they have that, then that'll make up for a lot of that. Like they were asking all these role players to become gods during the playoffs, and eventually that's not going to work. So I think, but I could see them both staying with the Heat. Like you're saying, though, due to this new CBA, it'll probably have to be on less money.
Yeah. I mean, they have bird rights. They can go a little bit over. I don't think they can give them like a max or anything. I think it's like a Herb Jones situation. It's like the early bird sitch. But yeah, I think Strus and Vincent probably go back to the Heat, and then those are guys that you try to leverage in a trade later. Although you won't be able to trade them until January 15th if you re-sign them. So that is one thing that's interesting, unless you sign and trade. Whew. Well, we ran through all that. Anthony, I think that we got through everything we wanted to talk about somehow. I'm pretty surprised, and I kind of made all the points I wanted to make too. We kind of knocked out this.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good early morning podcast for show.
For sure. We'll be back. I think we'll be back pretty consistently here for like a little bit. I got a little bit more free time. And Anthony's rocking out. Anthony's got a lot of stuff going on, but he's always down to spit hoops. You know what I'm saying? So we'll be back soon. Yeah. We'll be back soon.
Yeah. Maybe sooner than you guys think. Who knows? We can't read the future. But until then, we'll be here, Spittin Hoops.
Peace out, y'all.